This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Kyle and I have the pleasure of talking with Mr. Micah Salas today. Micah, what's going on, brother?
Hey, how are you guys doing? I'm just trying to stay cool in this Texas heat, man.
Ooh. I was telling somebody earlier, like my Father's Day involved me being in the pool up to about my armpits in water, and I know that for a fact because there is a straight line across my chest of sunburn where the water was for the whole day, man. It's crazy.
It was hot yesterday.
It was a burner here for sure. And
For sure.
it's not going to get any better. And it's nice that we've gotten a little bit relaxed. I'm still kind of old school, Micah, that I like to wear a shirt and tie and a suit to go out and close a deal. But I got to tell you, man, when you've sweat through your suit just by the time you've walked to the car, it's excruciating. I'm glad that people have relaxed a little bit and don't necessarily expect that every single time anymore.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens after the COVID stuff kind of subsides a little bit in terms of dress code and all that. There's a lot of things I'll be curious to see how they kind of shake out, but that's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, why don't you give everybody kind of a little bit of background about who you are and how you got into the insurance industry and where you are today.
All right. Man, I'm 34. I'm married, been with my wife over 10 years, but I'm from Wisconsin originally and got into the insurance business in 2011. Actually, a recruiter from a direct writer had done the interviews with me in college my senior year, and I backed out for the last interview and said, I don't really want to sell insurance. That just does not sound fun. So anyways, fast forward 2 years from there, that was in 2008. He reached back out to me and said, hey, do you want to grab some coffee? I said, sure. And just started connecting. And really, honestly, he showed me the dollar signs and I was like, okay, I'm making nothing. I like what I can see here, and jumped into insurance. Did a year-long training program up in Minnesota and learned everything from, policy forms and all that stuff. And after that, had a territory. I was working, like I said, for a direct writer and did that for about 2.5 years, selling life insurance, disability, group health, and property casualty. And then about 2 years in or so, I was kind of starting to realize, you just had some really good relationships with clients, but ultimately felt like I could only give them one option and wanted to be able to be the person that could really help them out in any situation, regardless of what the market was doing. So started kind of looking into independent agencies, and then moved to Texas at that same time about 6 years ago now, and have been with Marsh & McLennan Agency really ever since. So
let me ask you, is the agency you're at actually like Marsh, or is it one of the acquisitions they made when they started moving into the middle market? Not that there's like one that's lesser than the other, but there's two pretty distinct divisions that I'm aware of inside of Marsh. One's the national brokerage that's whale hunters all the time. And then the other one's the one that's sort of come in and started gobbling up people that we compete against down here in Florida.
Yeah, so I'm with Marsh's little brother, I guess you could call us. Yeah, Marsh McLennan Agency, which we're the gobbler. We're the one who's kind of trying to really kind of set into the middle market space. I would call even small business to middle market. But yeah, I'm not with Marsh, the big Marsh, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that we probably have way more in common if you're playing in that space. I would love to talk to anybody that's working for Marsh Global, but at the same time, it's a little different animal. So the agency that you're at right now has it been Marsh since you've been there, or did you go through sort of a conversion?
So yeah, we're kind of a concoction. When I came down to Houston, we were the first acquisition, but this was from 2009 or something. And since I've been here in the 6 years, they've bought really 3 or 4 different agencies all across Texas and Louisiana that make up Marsh McLennan Agency Southwest. So it's been, I guess you could say, a combination of a bunch of smaller agencies now coming together.
Interesting. So, it's probably a whole different world than what Kyle and I are used to, because we're kind of sort of bootstrapping things as we go along to grow Florida Risk from the ground up. You've got a lot of resources behind you, I would imagine.
Yeah. It seems like almost every agency now that I compete against or is out there has the standard loss control guy, the standard claims person, the team that can do contracts. But yeah, there's definitely some resources. I personally, the one that I probably get the most value out of is just I don't want to say that, I guess you could say the depth of people. Just there's a lot of different people with a lot of different experiences across the country that you can use as resources. And that's probably honestly one of the most helpful for me. If I come across, let's just say, a moving company, I have no experience in the moving space, and I can call someone who has 10 movers out of Washington, right? And then they're like, hey, this is the things you got to be mindful of. Here's some programs we can do. So that, from that standpoint, is probably what I find the most helpful.
Interesting. And how much, because I've never worked for what I would say a more corporate environment, how much do they push down sort of the corporate Marsh mentality on you guys versus letting you do your own thing?
So, yeah, great question. One of the reasons I like it here personally, and I haven't left, is because they allow us to be very entrepreneurial in terms of, hey, this is, decisions are made on a local basis. So if you're out of Houston or Austin, you have a head of office and they allow you to kind of do things as you best see fit here. Of course, there's the common corporate themes that you got to have, but in terms of like the kind of clients you want to go after, as long as they fit in terms of the revenue size, really you can take it and run with it and, do whatever you think is best for you and your geographic region.
So is there a bunch of automation sequences and technology that you guys use when you're marketing and going after people, or do they just really give you a lot of freedom to where you can, if you're more of a cold calling guy, then you just use that avenue, and it's not like what's that aspect look like?
Yeah. So, I think we're trying to adapt and integrate like the newsletter that will go out automatically to clients. And then if they click on a link, you can see where they clicked, or prospects. We have Salesforce, we have some of that stuff, but I think we're trying to learn, just probably like a lot of other agencies, because all the agencies we acquired were probably just like y'all's firm, right? So it's a learning curve, but we've come a long way, I would say, in the last 5 years. But yeah, a lot of it's, I still think, comes down to the cold calling or the networking or the LinkedIn and kind of the basics. But we don't have some secret, I guess, lead generation formula where it's like, hey, here's 100 leads or 100 warm leads, go call them and close them, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, listen, and if you did, you wouldn't tell us anyhow, right? So, but no, I think it's interesting. That's one thing that does kind of differentiate us. I've spent way more money in technology than I would say a lot of my peers have, just to make sure we have those systems in place. So, Kyle and I are both of the mindset that cold calling is always going to be the best, in my opinion, anyhow, the best way to get in front of the people that you want. But by having those systems in place, it really helps you be more efficient in that process, as opposed to just, hunting with a shotgun and trying to spray everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're pushing hard to get all of our producers using Salesforce consistently, to have those processes in place. I've always just done it because I thought it made sense. I mean, why would I not want a CRM to basically tell me when to follow up, call people, and to make sure I can just log in on Monday and, here's what I got to do for the whole week. You know, to me, it makes complete sense. But yeah, I'm like you. I don't think cold calling is ever going to go away in terms of pinpointing who you really want to speak to.
No, and I mean, I think your value proposition only plays very well if you sort of have that dialed in too. Are there specific market segments that you go after? Do you have, I mean, have defined like specific industries where you feel like you really want to go deep more than others?
Yeah. So, I mean, construction's always been something. When I was with Federated Insurance, I was the direct writer I was for. They started to get into contractors, and I just felt like I was connected with them because they didn't play games. I mean, they kind of just wanted you to kind of hit them straight. And I just like that approach from my clients. So I have gotten into that space. Now I know everyone plays in construction. Within Texas in particular, there's a lot of industrial along the coast that I started to get into when I first moved down here. So people going into plants and doing boiler work or tank cleaning and things like that, I've had a pretty good niche in.
What kind of construction are you messing with? We like service contractors, but if you want me to go deal with anybody doing new construction or general contractors or things like that, I'd refer that to somebody all day long. It doesn't work well in Florida, specifically because so many people are not. I don't want to alienate too many people with my comments, but at the same time, I think a lot of our workers' comp problems in the state can be attributed to what goes on in the construction industry here. So it's a little bit of a unique environment, but the service contractors, the plumbers, HVACs, electricians, man, that's our bread and butter all day long.
Yeah, I love the service guys, but I honestly haven't called on them a lot, only because there is a lot of competition there. And I've done more of the heavy, I guess you'd say heavy industrial civil guys who are doing, well, right now a hot market, I think, is the people drilling for like Verizon. Those guys doing directional drilling and laying the wire line. That's been, and they have a lot of risk. They have a lot of vehicles. They have a lot of equipment, and a lot of heavy labor. But I've kind of played in that space, like so the grading and the site prep. We do have people that definitely do general contractors. I just haven't ever really focused on them myself.
Yeah, I think that part of the reason that the competition is different there than it is here is because we have state administered pricing on workers' comp. So there's no competitive advantage of going to one carrier to the other based on price. I mean, there could be cases made for claims handling and all of the program structure and all of that. But, as far as the raw rate goes, it's legislated by the state of Florida. So everybody in 5183 is going to have the same base rate, period. And then it's your mod and whatever safety drug-free credits will, alter that. Whereas in Texas, you don't even have to have comp. I mean, that's what's crazy. So
that is crazy.
For us, we lead with workers' comp, specifically experience modification factor analysis, because that's a big differentiator for us. And what we found is that our competition here in Florida just basically throws their hands up and says, well, the comp's the comp. Let me focus on getting you a real good price on your auto or your GL. And in the meantime, we're going in and looking at all of the factors that are contributing to their premiums being what they are. And we're focusing on that. And with comp specifically on the mod. But I mean, a lot of times if you have bad comp performance, you have bad fleet performance. Your comp is affected by the accidents that you have on the fleet side. And so we look across the whole gamut of things from a risk management perspective and a claims perspective. And we just don't find any competition at all. I can't tell you the number of times that we will go in and do an experience mod audit for somebody, talk to them about return to work, the right way to have return to work. And they've never heard that conversation before. It blows me away. And I can get on this podcast and there's people I compete against directly that I guarantee you are listening to me say this, and they're still not going to change what they do.
No, I think you're right. I mean, because the funny thing to me is, when I was with Federated, we had came out with not ModMaster. I know is probably what y'all use, and a lot of people that do take this serious use. and we use the same tool. But we had our own product, and it was kind of a similar approach. And they said, "Hey, we're going to be high on price, but sell using this kind of dissect their mod and show them all these cool ideas." And a lot of reps had a lot of success getting into these contractors that way, and that was 7-8 years ago. So it's surprising me that people don't use it that approach more. I think a lot of agents probably just start to feel like, no one cares. No one cares about that. They just care about the bottom line dollar, and they get in that mindset, and then they just get in that trap instead of looking for the clients who actually value, like you guys are doing, the risk management and all the resources that we can bring.
Well, I mean, the thing is, man, let's face it, the industry hasn't really changed in its approach in 100 years. So, there's a lot of people that can make a really comfortable living selling insurance as insurance salesmen. One of my biggest lines is, I don't want to ever be known for selling a product. I want to be known for solving problems. And if you solve problems for people, then you're always going to have a loyal client base. I don't want to get paid because I can sell you an insurance policy. I want to get paid because I'm giving you the best advice that I can give you, whether that means you inherit some risk and retain it internally, or you finance it through the purchase of an insurance product externally. I don't really care. I want you to value what I bring to the table with my experience and my advice more than me coming in and saying, I'll get you the best overall premium that you can get. That's a number one way for me not to meet with somebody. If you say, you want to quote my business this year? Nope, thanks. Actually, I probably owe you an apology. I wasn't very articulate in how I described how my firm approaches things. And for that, I feel like I may have wasted your time, but we don't get involved in the quoting game. It's a commoditized shuffling of paperwork, and you'll never get the best overall result if that's how you're going about your buying process.
And it's interesting because I feel like that's how that industry is, the construction industry. I mean, so I knew that Texas was a competitive, situation for the comp, but I didn't realize you didn't have to have comp. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, you could buy a occupational accident policy. Some people do that in an effort to try and put a Band-Aid over it. But I'd be interested in Micah's thoughts on that, because the fact is, this is what I have realized with Texas. In Micah, we don't write business in Texas now, but in my predecessor organization, we wrote master workers' compensation policies for PEOs, and we had quite a few of the larger PEOs in Texas as clients. So this is something that we dealt with all the time. But it seems like the larger companies, the more middle market stuff, you really just don't run into them not buying comp. They tend to be pretty responsible with how they think of things. It's usually the smaller businesses, from what I've seen anyhow. But I'm interested in your comments on that.
Yeah, great question. Because when I first moved here too, I was like, well, you don't have to buy word comp. It was crazy to me. So, but you're right, David. I mean, everybody basically buys work comp because especially if you're in construction, because in order to get on your client's job site or whatever in their building, you need to show a certificate. And if they're smart, they're going to require comp. So it's almost like everyone has it. However, the industries where people absolutely don't buy it is a lot of times trucking companies won't carry it. And like, let's say manufacturers, where again, they don't have to furnish certificates of insurance. They'll all buy an OCAC policy. But here's the thing is the price of work comp has come down so much over the last, since I've been here. And there's just more and more competition coming to Texas as well. Texas Mutual dominated the market for a while, and still they're a great partner and still do write a lot of business. But now other players are getting in because it's just a more profitable line. And it doesn't even really honestly even make sense to buy even the OCAC product versus just a standard comp, because you're not saving a whole lot, and you bring on a little bit more. You're taking on more liability, more risk as a business in terms of being able to be sued, and just easier to manage if you just buy the work comp versus some of the admin stuff you got to buy if you go the OCAC policy.
Yeah, it's interesting. That whole thing just sort of blows my mind. And, one of the things, and I don't know if it's still this way or not, you're right, Texas Mutual is a good partner, but it was so foreign to me because in Florida, when you go to the state fund, it's going to be at least triple the premium in most cases. Whereas Texas Mutual, which is also the market of last resort in Texas, or at least it was when we were doing business there, we're also a competitor. Like, they could competitively price. We don't have that luxury here. So it was kind of interesting. If you got into the right account, Texas Mutual would just go clean everybody's plow if they wanted to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I honestly don't know I don't think Texas Mutual is a state fund. They're a mutual privately held insurance company. They have a dividend program here in Texas, which a lot of other carriers don't have. Actually, maybe I know of maybe one other one that has. So then they'll never tell their client what the amount their dividend will be, or they can't even tell us how it's calculated. So, but every year you'll see. I mean, I have some clients. One client, tank cleaner, he's paying $37,000 for his comp. He got a dividend check this year for $30,000. So net
solid return there.
$7,000. But then 2 years ago, he got a dividend check for $16,000, which is still nice. But why did it go up? And his mod, he still has never had any accidents. His mod is as low as it can be, a 0.7 something. So it's kind of interesting. But that's how.
Did his company size drastically change?
No, company size did not change. So that's kind of the volatility of the dividends. Yeah. But it's just that's why people don't really want to leave either, because they know the longer they've been with them, your dividends are going to go up for the most part if you have good claims experience.
They use that against you if you try and leave too.
Oh yeah. As an agent,
yeah. I mean, I tell all my clients, I'm like, hey, if you want to leave Texas Mutual, here's, let's say CNA is coming in really hot on the comp. They're going to save you $20,000 off the bat, or here's your dividend, and you can kind of weigh, do you want to take the money now or hope you get a dividend back? But it's never guaranteed, although they paid it for as long as they've been in business.
And we can't tell you how much it's going to be or how they calculate it. So you get to take door number 3 or what you can quantify now. I think that's one of the interesting things about the way that it works here is there's so many different ways that they can structure dividends or comp policies in general. I don't know if you guys have the ability to have people write on a paid and incurred loss retro basis there. High deductible stuff, that's probably a little bit further upstream than where we're going to be, playing most of the time. But if you just live in the normal bread and butter middle market, I went into an account that was referred to me by one of my clients that, it's a reasonably sized account. It's not, if I'm actually going out to focus on prospecting, it's probably below the threshold of what I would look at, but it's about $150,000 in premium all in. And the comp on it was right around $40,000. And I looked at it, and they were with a carrier on a 10% guaranteed flat dividend, and they had a 0.77 mod. And so the reason why that is significant is because in Florida, you can get a flat dividend, you can get a sliding scale dividend, or you can get a hybrid. Mm-hmm. And so we have carriers that will do the 10% flat with a slider on the back end, that if you have a really good year, they're going to reward you for that performance with a dividend, an additional dividend payment. So my question when I went in, and listen, the people that the agent that was on this account is a good agent. The agency is a good agency. And when I looked at the piece of business, I'm like, I really don't know what value I'm going to be able to bring here. As I started, peeling the layers back, I just asked the guy, why are you settling for a 10% flat dividend? Well, because we're a relatively conservative company and we wanted to make sure we were guaranteed to get something. I said, you guys have a 0.77 mod. I understand that you could have a shock loss, but with the performance that you've had and the way that comp carriers structure things, you should be on a hybrid. You should be getting the guaranteed 10% with the chance to recoup an additional 15 to 25% on the back end if you continue to have the same performance that you have right now. And he had never even heard of it, which blows my mind. But I mean, that's the kind of crazy stuff that you run into is, you get an agent that's asleep at the wheel and they think that they're doing their client a favor, and then it's just enough to get by. The next thing you know, you come in and somebody knows of a product that's a better product. I mean, again, there's no premium difference. Mm-hmm. It's just what we can do on the dividend structure. So yeah, you're guaranteed your 10, and now we can give you the opportunity to earn all of this other back. And it was a significant amount of money because we're getting crucified on auto rate here right now. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, auto and excess and property as well is just tough. But when I was in Wisconsin, we actually had the same kind of deal, the sliding dividends. And again, it ultimately comes back to you were the one who told them that. And I think what kills a lot of agents, I think they're good. A lot of agents think they're working hard, they're doing the right job, but it depends on your model. That first year, you maybe put a lot of effort in, you check what marketing did, or you market it yourself. And then, the second renewal, the third renewal comes, and all of a sudden your account manager's out there just getting renewal quotes. And this is no offense to account managers, but they're just not, they don't care as much as producers, care, I don't think. And they kind of are trained to kind of check the boxes, look and make sure that they won't get an E&O, but they're not thinking strategically, and that's not really, in my opinion, that's not really their job. That's really a producer's job. I think an advisor, right, is to at least be looking through those options and advising the client on, like you just said, why not take the risk? There's no downside to it. And actually, I say the same thing with small captives right now. I think it's pretty interesting. I know there's a lot more hoops you got to jump through, but man, I see some businesses out there where it's like, even on the downside, if you take your GL, your comp, and your auto, throw it into this group captive, you could save, let's just say 40%. I know you have to go to some meetings and stuff like that, but you're already doing all the right things. And the downside, I think people hear the word captive and they think like, oh my God, I could have like $2 million losses. Well, it's like, you'll know what your max loss could be. And to me, the downside just doesn't justify staying put,
Yeah. And the way they have those smaller ones structured anyhow, there's a lot of protections there. It's really, it's interesting because when I started my career calling on middle market accounts, the agency that I was at we were 5-tool players, man. We could go in, we could write high net worth personal lines, group benefits, life, 401k, or the property and casualty. So there was always an opportunity to make money on the table if you could figure out what the pain point was. And there would be times where I would go in and be leading with comp and realize the reason the comp performance was bad is because the benefits sucked. And we needed to look and have a benefits conversation, because if they, gave some voluntary benefit options and maybe threw a disability plan in there, the loss ratio on the comp would drop. And it really, it's a shell game with the money at that point. But, where I'm going with this is it's amazing how similar the structure of those self-insured or partially self-insured benefits plans are compared to how workers' comp works. So if you understand the mechanics of workers' comp, you can also go in and do a pretty good job of selling benefits too. And I think in to bring it back to what you originally said, when you structure those self-insured benefits programs, you're putting the specific loss, stop losses and all of those things on the policies. Those captives have that to protect the business. So it's not like you're going in and there's a blank check on the back end. It's not. There's a stop loss there that's going to protect you in that case.
Yeah, I agree. It was weird. I met with I got my foot in the door at a really large company here. I mean, 2,000 plus employees, road contractor, $1 billion in revenue, and the guy was not on any type of group captive. And he's like, yeah, we have some higher higher deductibles and stuff. And he's like, I just don't see what's the point. He's like, our rates are so good. And we had 2 first meetings. We, brought in our captive expert, just talked to him about even letting us just do a feasibility study and just show you, because I didn't know what his numbers actually were, but he's like, no, I think our rates have been really flat. They were in Salas, we've been with Travelers all these years. And I said, you might be in a great spot, but why would you not at least want the feasibility study done to see kind of if it makes sense to go the group captive route? But I think people they don't want to do the extra work, and maybe to these really large companies, to them paying, $1 million for insurance isn't that big of a deal, even though to us it seems like it should be. But that might be one of the reasons why I think there's not more people jumping into that pool.
So you do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, man, as do I. I'm interested in the ROI that you're seeing from that. Are you getting prospects from your LinkedIn stuff that you're putting out? I mean, you're extremely consistent with it, man. You get props for that. The content you put out is good. You're consistent about getting it out. I have to believe that you're getting some level of traction with it. And if you're not, my advice to you is stick with it, because you will. But I'm interested in how that's playing out for you.
Yeah. So my ROI, if I would go just by the book, is 0 at this point. I haven't had any legit business come through from it. I have had some good conversations with a couple business owners that have reached out. They're just too small for us, and they'd be too small for even yourself, and really a lot of agencies, which is fine. I don't mind helping those people out, but I've had like 2 or 3 leads where it's I don't know if it's from my content or it's more me proactively engaging with them and actually following them and then seeing what they're posting, commenting on their stuff, adding relevant comments, and building up some rapport that way. So I had a good prospect come in last year that way. I didn't end up closing because he has a really good relationship, but we've met. We kind of, now it's a warm lead, I guess you'd say, a good relationship. And I have one other big deal this year I'm working on that was I would attribute to LinkedIn and kind of building that relationship first. I think one of the frustrations is that it doesn't seem like a lot of the decision makers, the CFOs, the CEOs, business owners are really using LinkedIn in that way yet. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to change. I just don't know when it's going to happen. I think I'm 34, so I think it'll happen in my lifetime because it just has to. I would think. Right. So for me, it's a long-term play. And,
so I'm gonna tell you something, and this is the fact that my beard is now turning white, or the lack, what my minimal beard that I'm able to grow is turning white. But I was an early adopter of LinkedIn, like way back in the early 2000s. And I saw it and I'm like, this is a really good concept. I think this is going to go somewhere. So I started using it, learning it, and everything else. And back in those days, the decision makers were on there and they were using it. And I watched over the next 10 years a complete shift in the content that was on there, who was using it, who was there to receive it. And I'll tell you what, man, I think that self-serving salespeople ruined LinkedIn more than anything else. And I don't mean people that are putting valuable content out like yourself. I'm talking about people that are out basically putting up used car commercials in the LinkedIn news feed, and it drove people away. And I've started to see it sort of come back around full circle a little bit. But I still think very much that if you look at where LinkedIn is right now, it is geared more towards salespeople than anything else. And I think that that's probably how a lot of your C-suite people view it at this point.
Yeah. I mean, if I look, so like you said, I put out content regularly. I have for now a year and a couple months, and I could literally probably go start a consulting business for insurance agencies, because I get hit up by agents. Hey, can you coach me on this? Or I'd like to pick your brain on this, probably 3-4 times a week, and I'm not even trying to, that's not a business I'm trying to get into. That's nothing I really care to do. Now I'm happy to help these people. And I've made some good connections with other agents, and I've gotten like podcasts, right? I've gotten on some podcasts, which is good for exposure, but I'm not seeing like a return on it from a business standpoint. So yeah, you see these people, the LinkedIn advertisers, this is your way to grow. I think it depends who's your target audience. I mean, if you're trying to sell to salespeople, or if you're a real estate agent, yeah, you should absolutely be on LinkedIn every single day. I'd spend tons of time on there. From an insurance agency standpoint or agent producer, I would spend, I don't know, 30 minutes a day to an hour, whatever, connecting with people, following people, seeing what's going on, posting relevant content. But if you're expecting it to get rich on, it's not going to happen, I don't think. I would say it's a shame that things have changed that way. I kind of noticed the same thing with email. Feels like email used to be such an effective sales tool when I got into sales back in 2008. Now it's like I can't even get a reply ever. I don't know if you've had the same struggle.
I think you will see a return on that, as you keep at it. But there's definitely a difference between putting out content and doing the stuff that has driven people away, where they're, just blind sending you, messages about their products that they think that you would like. It's completely different. But I do want to talk about one of the posts you had, because it's one of my pet peeves, or I at least laugh about it whenever it happens. And I'm sure other agents do as well. But there's people on here that are listening that don't understand this. So if you could elaborate on the whiting out of the premium content that he posted.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that. And before you answer, Micah, my all-time favorite is the one who they don't white it out, but they use a marker. But then when they put it on their scanner to send it to you, the backlight allows the numbers to go through anyhow. And so I just ignore it. Like I don't address the fact that I could see it. But what I do is I put a pricing comparison and I use all the numbers that they had attempted to black out in the comparison when we send them some things over.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. I remember being at Federated, when we issued our policies, my manager was like, okay, when you get the policies and before you deliver it, white out all the premiums so any competing agents don't have it. I'm like, okay, whatever, but yeah, it's what spurred on that video is, especially when I was quoting, as you guys don't really do anymore, and I don't either, we go on BOR, but especially if you're quoting, like whiting out the premiums makes 0 sense for a couple reasons. One is, you're hurting yourself because there's other agents trying to go to the marketplace, and they obviously, those markets don't have much interest in if they don't even know the starting point. And I think that's the whole reason I had made that video. Like, you're only hurting yourself. Again, I think all roads lead back to, once you start to have these conversations with business owners, is why not just hire an agent? But if you're going to quote, at least keep the premiums on there so people know a starting point. I always say this too, it's an expiring premium. So it's old, doesn't matter. Things change from year to year. And that's just, I was talking with one agent one time. I said, drop that, because saying that, at least the business owner's like, okay, I'm giving you last year's price anyways. It doesn't really matter. But what killed me is my approach is to do due diligence and to review the policies. And I tell people I'm not going to market, and I'd still have some people that would want to white out the premiums. I'm like, I don't think you understand. I'm trying to do some analysis for you, trying to even see if your rates might be the best they can be. There might be nothing I can do with risk management or anything to help you in that category. Don't you at least want to know how you compare to your peers? And so that's probably what spurred that video on, is I probably had an experience like that. I just think some buyers are just so entrenched of, I can't show a price, can't show a price.
They're in that price versus value mentality that we're talking about earlier. And it's, they're shopping like it's a commodity, like it's a tangible, product that they can buy, where price is the only thing that matters. But I just thought that was interesting. I watched that earlier and laughed. I've had current clients white out their premiums when they send stuff to me. I'm like, dude, I know your premium. I'm your agent.
Yeah. Who are you really whiting that out for, by the way? Do I need to be concerned that you're competing already?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That it's funny. That video, I remember I was at that time, I had an apartment. I was like randomly, I think I got done feeding my dog, and I had the thought, because I think an experience had happened, and I was like, I'm just going to shoot this video real quick. And it ended up being probably one of the most popular videos I've ever done, because so many can relate to it, that it's just so annoying. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think it may just be complete ignorance of people that just don't understand, that's completely taking away their leverage. But still, it is a source of frustration for many agents.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Micah, what's your content production strategy? I mean, you keep it simple, right? I mean, did you do exactly what I do basically? I mean, I'll put transcripts, or subtitles or whatever on some of the videos that I record. But I mean, I think that just doing raw video content with a selfie style cell phone shot gets people's attention way more than if you put a ton of production quality into it. That has always worked better for me than, trying to spruce it up.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think because it comes across as more genuine, and I use the same approach I use for prospecting as I do on LinkedIn, which is cut out all the glitz and glamour, just kind of get straight to the point. So even when I cold call people, it's, hey, would you be open to a conversation about your insurance program? I have zero interest in quoting or bidding, but we have a different approach. And I just wanted to see if you ever do any sort of due diligence. And that's it. And then, because I think so many people, hey, we can save you X and do this and that. And then it's like every salesperson's out there trying to say that. So I just take the opposite approach and just keep it direct and to the point. And then it makes cold calling a lot easier as well. I mean, you're not fumbling over your, some fancy script. And so I take that same concept with LinkedIn and just try to shoot it straight.
Do you read a lot of books?
I do. Not a lot of sales books, I'll be honest, just burn me out because they're just.
Yeah, I don't read any sales. I honestly don't read sales books at all. It's funny. Somebody asked me, I was on somebody's podcast. I don't remember who it is, but they asked me what's the best sales book that I've ever read. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know that I've ever read a sales book. I read the Little Red Book of Selling, and I read The Art of Selling like back when I was 18, 19 years old, but I can't think through it. But I was going to ask you, have you ever read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss?
So I read do you follow Josh Brown?
I do.
So he uses a lot of his stuff within his posts, and that's how I learned about Chris Voss. So I have watched some of his videos on YouTube. He's been interviewed by some other video channels I watch. And
I would highly recommend that you read that book and don't read it through anybody else's filter. Not that Josh Braun's stuff isn't good. He has excellent content, but I mean, that's probably the most impactful book that I have read in the last decade. Wow. And just read it and let it work in your own mind as to how you can apply it. It is not a sales book by any stretch. It is 100% about the art of negotiation in the context that Voss was a hostage negotiator. But he gets really in depth into how the subconscious mind works and how you frame things. And one of the things that I learned from reading that book was that no is actually good and yes is actually bad in a lot of context. A lot of times people will tell all of the sales books would say, get to yes as fast as you can, blah, 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 blah. A lot of times when you get to yes, they're just guessing you to get you to shut up and get out of there, or they're giving you yes because they don't know how to tell you no, or they're giving you yes because they want you to keep talking so they can get as much information as they can from you, but they're never going to hire you. Yeah. If you get them to know, subconsciously, they feel like they're in control of the conversation at that point. So I have actually gone back and changed a lot of my scripting and how I ask questions and things to allow them to give me a no answer first, because subconsciously they feel like they're controlling the conversation at that point. And I got to tell you, man, it works like a charm. So, I mean, for people listening to this, if you want to really up your game, A, read Chris's book. It's fantastic. But B, focus on that piece of it. And I'm going to give you an example. An example of that would be if I'm picking up the phone to telemarket somebody and I get the person on the phone, instead of me immediately going into trying to set an appointment or get a yes out of them, I'll give them a question along the lines of, I'm calling you today because I've gotten your preliminary experience modification factor from NCCI, and it's going up again this year. Are you happy that you're paying 65% more for your workers' comp than your peer group is? And the answer is no, right? Well, now they feel like if it's yes, then that's a very short conversation. But if it's no, then you can immediately move. Well, would it make sense to explore ways that you might be able to improve your position in the marketplace and ultimately lower your total cost of res? And there's your yes.
Yeah.
So sounds like a good book. I wish there was a copy of it somewhere that somebody had that they could get to me.
You know what? And I could have easily given it to you when you came over and picked up your stuff for Nash the other day. I completely spaced on it. Oh, well, but I mean, it's interesting psychology, Micah, because, I think sometimes I'm probably a little bit different in the way that I'm willing to adapt and try new things. But my approach has worked for so long, and it's still so much different than my competition's approach is, even just how we go in and begin the meetings and the research that we do prior and all of that. I haven't really needed to modify anything. But I got to tell you, man, the level of success has gone through the roof by getting people to know faster. And it blew my mind. Like literally everything I've tried from this guy's book and made it into my regimen has worked. So that's my gift to you, man. If you read any book in the near future, I would definitely pick that book up and read it. It's not salesy. It's interesting. You get a good behind the scenes look at how the FBI works. But there's so many things that are tangible that we can put into our careers. It's just fantastic.
Well, appreciate you sharing that. I'm gonna check it out. I think at one point I had bought maybe the high level executive, that you can buy like $2.99 versions of books.
Yeah.
And get the high level notes on
Cliff
it.
Notes.
So I'm gonna have to go read that again.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a pretty easy read. Even the full thing, it's not like it's a super thick Art of War type, or Don Quixote or something like that. It's a couple hundred pages at the most. And if you just pop 10, 15 pages a day, you're done in 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's a good one. So listen, when you're out prospecting, how do you, and if there's secret sauce, just say, look, man, there's secret sauce. I'm not going to give up the goods on a podcast. But I mean, I'm interested in how do you sort of fill your pipeline? Like, what's your goal when you sit down to look at who you're going to go after over the course of the next 12 months? I don't know if you construct a personal business plan or not. I do every year, and I ask that my producers do the same. But I'm interested in sort of what your starting point is and how you refine that to give you the highest hit ratio possible.
Yeah. I sit down every year. I mean, we, as an organization, we have to anyways, but I do it. You sit down, I look through kind of month by month when people, are expiring, not saying I'm trying to quote them, but just in my mind to think through, okay, when's revenue going to hit? And, in my mind, anywhere from usually 6 to 10 new clients a year is going to get me the revenue that I would like to be at, right? Or more. So it kind of really just, and it's hard to explain because I guess now that I've been doing it for 6 years, I feel like you have just a constant, you're constantly out there with the same type of prospects, the same people that are long-term sales, you're just building a relationship with them. But every year it's like, okay, I'm going to touch this guy, 3-4 times with outreach. And I guess I kind of just look through the businesses that I want to work with from that I know have risk, also that I know that I've had success with. Me personally and us as an agency, and I try to stay within those categories for the most part. I don't really just randomly call, a jeweler or someone like that. I stay pretty tight to what I know I do well, just because I know going into those meetings, I can speak with confidence, and then I know we can deliver as well, versus, like I said, trying to go write a jeweler and hope we can deliver. And I have to go do research on what market to write best. That just wastes a lot of time.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of times people don't get that. I got into a little bit of a scrape in an online forum this weekend because the question came up about minimum revenue per account for producers and why an agency would do that versus why they wouldn't. And I'm a firm believer that if you're an outside producer, you should never call on anything below $5,000 in agency revenue, period. And meanwhile, I'm in a group of agency owners, and you've got people that are scratch agents that are saying, well, I'm not turning any business away. I'm a brand new business. I need all the revenue I can get. Well, that's great. And I mean, the one person even made mention of a $50 renter's policy. Like, they're not even going to turn that away. And I'm thinking,
wow,
this is kind of where the industry is, right? Like, some people just think you should write anything because it's revenue. And that's the problem. I think that when agencies and agency owners look at things through that lens, if number one, there's a subset of agencies that talk about their numbers in premium, and then there's a subset that talk about their agencies in revenue. Most of the time, I'm going to align with the same people that are talking about things in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. Agencies that talk about premium are typically smaller, more Main Street agencies, and there's nothing wrong with either of the two. It's just a different thought process. But my thought process is, if you're out writing accounts that are losing profit, you're not making a profit on them, they're losing money for your agency, writing more of them doesn't help you. It actually makes it worse. So if I'm a scratch agency and I'm writing unprofitable business, I'm not really doing what I can to get my agency off the ground by writing more unprofitable business. And it's a difficult thing to do, man. I mean, I've been a producer before. I still am. But I mean, I've been at that point where, if you're looking to write 6 to 10 accounts a year, you're not even bringing in one account a month. If you're a newer producer and you don't have a process in place and understand that you just got to continue to work that process, that at the end, that if your results are measured over the course of the entire year, it's going to be okay. But I think sometimes we need validation and we need instant gratification, and we get that through going out and writing something, getting something on the books. And that couldn't be further from the truth as to what's good for the agency. I think agency owners are so worried about seeing a constant stream of activity that they force some of these behaviors by getting people to go out and write anything. Whatever you can get, man, write the $3,000 ENS policy that's going to cancel 10 times for non-payment. Yeah. It makes them feel good about themselves. I'm of the opinion that as long as I hit, $250,000 or more a year in revenue, I don't care if that comes in one account or 10 accounts. I just want to hit that number. And that's why I always have big rocks that I'm juggling. There are always 3 or 4 large commercial opportunities in my pipeline. And by large, I mean between 50 and 100,000 in revenue. The rest of them, I'll stay, anywhere. I like to be between 25 and 50, but probably anywhere between 10 and 50,000 in revenue. I've got a very robust pipeline of that stuff. I don't want anything to do with something that's $2,000 in premium. First off, we probably don't have the right market for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, my agency's not set up to write that kind of business. And it's just interesting when you get into groups of agencies of all shapes and sizes in different parts of the country, how they view that. Like,
what's your argument back for the person who's trying to say, well, $2,000 is $2,000, man? Like, how do you make them understand that? Okay, that's true. However, you could be losing money on that.
I guess tell them to go talk with your service team and also look at your capacity for growth. It's like my wife's an account manager. So I hear firsthand, how much it sucks to service some accounts, right? Especially if they're not going to be profitable. It's like, what's the point? And that's the hard part. Insurance isn't tangible. So it's not like you're making a tangible product and like, oh, we're not losing money. Like you said, 2,000 is 2,000, but it's like, look at the time invested, but then also your own time going forward. It's like, you got to get that concept of how important your time is so you can really hit the big ones like David was talking about. And same as you, David. I mean, every year I have that one, I don't know what it is. The last 5 years, I have that one account that's that 50 to 125 range that I hit, right? And then the other ones I'll fill in that are 15 to 30 or 40, but it's great security as well, but it just seems to be the way that it works out.
Yeah, I would never be able to have my whole pipeline full of $100,000 accounts, just because even if your whole pipeline is full of those, the sales timeline on those accounts is so much different. And, there's times where on those larger accounts, I've worked 2 and 3 years before I get in to the point where I actually can bring it on board. So I'm very apprehensive about having more than about 3 or 4 that I'm actively working on. And then if I close one of them, I'll replace it with the next one on the list. But, my argument to the people that is the $2,000 in premium, if they were to come in and ask me, why I wouldn't do that, it's because A, I don't know that I have the markets for it. B, experience has taught me that those people are, number one, going to be way more service than an average middle market account is, shockingly. And number 3, they're only going to shop on price because there is zero value that can be delivered. I'm sorry, but if you're an agency out there and your idea of a value proposition is we're going to get you good rates and we'll get your certificates to you really fast, you need to invest in systems and processes to get you into the next decade. Because the fact is, right now, that's customer service and that's expected. You need to do what you can to provide a client experience. And the other thing is, I've been on record multiple times saying this, but if you're playing in that range, you're not even competing against other agencies. You're competing against Google, Amazon, big data. Anybody who has data that has the ability to automate a quoting process, any of that stuff is going to get gobbled up by artificial intelligence and venture capital money. And if you built your whole agency off of that, well, I'm sorry, we've been trying to tell you.
Yeah, that's not a good strategy, I wouldn't say either. Now, I have noticed that even we've done this, we have created a small business unit that does actually extremely well because we've created a process to where it's it's just process driven, right? So we kind of know who fits in that little box. If it's a referral and they're just too small, but we don't want to burn that bridge or have that relationship at jeopardy. But even then we still have minimums, and I still don't think we'll do anything for $500 or $1,000. In terms of revenue, that probably be at least have to be 1,500 to $5-6 of revenue where it would make sense. And it has to be a layup. We're not going to make them do marketing work on it. It's like, no, this is a done deal. Here you go.
Well, I mean, look at it from the overall profitability of the agency too. You have a $500 account and it has one reasonably large claim. You just blew your whole loss ratio because you brought that smaller account in. It didn't have the premium to sustain its losses, and they're typically not a sophisticated enough business to have a lot of the programs in place to avoid having losses like that. They don't have return to work. They don't, so which means we would have to do all of that for them, which then goes back to my argument that you're losing money on the account because you're having to invest in it. And the number one argument that came back in that entire thread was, well, you don't know how big it's going to be. You don't know how much that's going to grow. You can write some of these little ones and they grow into these awesome accounts over time. And my response to that was, you know what? You're absolutely right. I guess the difference from my point of view is I would rather go after the accounts that are already the size this one could grow to than waste my time in hopes and prayers that this thing will actually get off the ground and grow to the level of the middle market. And by the way, if it's 25,000 in revenue in the middle market, those are like, there's no hard, fast rule that says, okay, we're at 25,000 in insurance revenue. We need to stop growing now. No, they grow too.
Yeah. Well, and
if an account's going to grow or not, give me a break.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing that's funny about that too, is let's say it does grow and you put all your blood, sweat, and tears when it's paying you nothing, then it finally grows. Well, guess who's calling on them? All the other brokers who play in that space, and your client might just leave you anyways. I mean, why would they be loyal to you? They might feel they outgrown you because they're like, I just need a change, right?
Yeah, or in their mind, we've been with you for 8 years and it's just time for a change. Well, great. You just basically bent me over, after I invested in you all of this time. It's just, there's so many reasons not to do it. But again, man, I mean, that's one of the things that makes our industry pretty cool is different strokes for different folks. There's all kinds of shapes and sizes of agencies, people that specialize in other. It's like non-standard auto. Some of the wealthiest agency owners that I know own agencies that do nothing but non-standard auto. That sounds like the worst job ever. I do not want to have to sit and write 10-20-10 auto so somebody can get their tag or their license renewed, or they got a DUI and they need an SR22 or any of these other things. I want nothing to do with it. But I know guys, and especially in states like Texas, where you can put a service fee on top of the commission to get it, they're just printing money. And I understand the logic behind what they're doing by charging a service fee. The fact that the account if it cancels for non-pay or whatever, is really irrelevant because they're not counting that as their revenue as much as they are. The service fee is the hedge that protects them. If these accounts actually stay on the books, that's all bonus money in their mind. But it's just crazy how many times, and sometimes with the same people over and over again, that are canceling for non-pay, and 3 months later they come back, they have to get insurance again, boom, another service fee. You would never think about that. It's not something I would want to do, but I can't argue against the profitability of it based on the business models of the people that I know that have been successful doing it.
Well, I was at a CIC once, and this guy made a comment. He's like, and he was out of Michigan or somewhere, and he said, I don't look at my agency as an insurance agency. I'm a marketing agency. So I think the people like you said, David, that have that mindset, they just maybe want to make the money and just they don't view themselves as insurance people. They're just like, that's just the end product. But I'm just trying to make money, and that's how I make it. So yeah, it's that wouldn't appeal to me at all. That would seem boring and monotonous. But I guess if that's your drive is just simply to make the money, then I guess, yeah, you are what you are. You're a marketing agency.
Well, I got one more question for you. What advice would you give anybody who was starting out in the insurance industry as a producer today?
Wow. There's a lot of different ways I could go with this. I'll say a couple things. So first is don't listen to fake news that cold calling's dead.
I think a lot of producers out there kind of get this. They come in and they're like, I got to go do all this tons of networking and all this other stuff. It's like, dude, you're a young person. Just hit the phones and start trying to have conversations and be consistent in that. You will talk to people that want to talk with you if you're saying the right messaging. The second thing I would say is going with the mindset of not quoting business, and whether your agency allows it or not. Mine, thankfully, we had a very forward-thinking CEO at the time, and he's like, "You guys, the younger guys here, you're not quoting anything." And that was a shock for me when I moved down here because I had only quoted at Federated. I had to. So I would say take that mindset up yourself of, like you said, David, earlier, we're not, the price is the price, but I'm really an advisor. That's who I am. I'm selling myself and what I can do for clients, what problems I can solve, what resources I can bring to the table. And I think if you view yourself that way and start working your first conversations around that way, you're going to stand out from a lot of other agents who are calling on on prospects. So
I agree, man. Well, listen, we've been going about an hour. We need to wrap up. How can they find you if they want to hear more?
Yeah. LinkedIn's the best way, really. I would say, my contact info's on there, my cell phone, my email, shoot me a message. I'm always willing to help out people and have conversations with people.
Listen, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I wish you nothing but the best in the future. Please know that if I could ever be a resource to you in any way, shape, or form, feel free to reach out, even if it's just to, brainstorm and bounce ideas off. And, I'm going to selfishly do the same. So at least there could be some reciprocity there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take you up on that.
Sounds good, man. Micah, have a great week, man. And again, really appreciate the time you spent with us today.
All right. Take care, guys.
Micah.
Have a good 4th.
Yep.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.